Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Trustees of ECS to order. We're going to start with the roll call. I'll say your name, you say if you're here. Lisa Elliott, Rohit Acharya, here. Andre Samuel, here. Kristen Long, Tiffany Jimenez, Tobias is here. Brandon Forbes. Megan Carter is not going to make it. Stan O'Loughlin is on his way. He texted me. Jen Community.
Here.
Matthew Gillett. Here. David Turner. Here. Wade noted. Okay. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of ECS is to educate each student to high academic standards, innovative curricula that will foster knowledge, love of, and respect for the environment, and preserve it for future generations. We grow citizens. Our vision: every ECS graduate will be an actively engaged citizen, driving thoughtful change in the world around them. Okay, do we have anyone set up for public comment?
No.
No, okay. Okay, we do have some guests here that will be giving us presentations in a little bit, but first we're just going to go to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they want to discuss from the consent agenda? Okay. Nope. Resolution 2023-11-2104 be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the consent agenda for November 15, 2023 be approved. Do I have a motion? Second. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. All right. Board education, we have several things tonight. I think we can start with our auditors. I was waiting for this pen here. So, yeah, that's all we really wanted. Okay, yeah.
Michelle, are we able to put up the PowerPoint? Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay, so I'm Haley Strike. I was your audit manager for the audit this year. This is Jeff Kent. He's your audit partner. I'm just going to go through the reports that we issued, and then we could do some of the standard reporting that we have for you guys, as well as your audit results. So the reports that we issued this year is your single audit report. The report this year does consolidate the school and the foundation. In previous years, it was just the school and the foundation was excluded. So that's a little bit of a change this year. Just being with the foundation picking up a little bit more activity over the last year, we thought it would be best to include them in your report. We did issue the communication to those charged with governance letter that Jeff will go over those required disclosures with you guys. We will issue your annual financial report, your AFR, that will be filed by the end of this month with PDE. And then we do file 2 Form 990s, one for the school and one for the foundation, as well as your data collection form that's related to your single audit. And if you jump to the next slide, just an overall summary of the results from the audit. So we do have our independent auditor's report on the consolidated financial statements. We did issue an unmodified opinion on that report, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide in the audit of clean opinion, if you will. And then we had 2 other opinions related to your single audit testing. We had your report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government accounting auditing standards. That's a mouthful, but we had no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which is the highest level of assurance that we provide in that report. And we also had a report on compliance for major programs and on internal control over compliance required by the Uniform Guidance, which is the federal government's requirements under federal programs. We had issued an unmodified opinion in that report, and this year, as part of our single audit, we tested both of the ESSER programs, so your ARC ESSER and ESSER 2, which is consistent with what we tested last year. And then we do not have a formal management letter for you guys this year, which is great, meaning that any comments we've had from prior years have been resolved, and nothing this year came to our attention that would warrant a written recommendation to you guys. Yeah, so that's really great. For just in the finance department, that means we got everything that we needed for the audit. Everything was in order that we did receive. So that also means that anything that you guys have been seeing financial-wise throughout the year has been correct. We didn't come in during the audit and make any big adjustments or anything like that. And then I'll hand it over to Jeff here.
Okay, so required communication. So there's a letter that we issue as part of any audit that goes through communications we're required to make under our professional standards. So I'll hit these pretty quickly. The first part of the letter talks about responsibility. So certainly our responsibility is to perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and to issue an opinion on the financial statements. As Haley mentioned, you because of the federal funding you receive, you also have additional level of reporting on internal control and compliance that is part of the scope of the audit as well. But the letter talks about the fact that the financial statements themselves, the related internal control processes, the compliance processes of your federal programs, those are certainly the responsibility of the organization, and we're issuing opinions and reports in terms of the audit results. Can go to the next slide. I guess one thing to point out there, the financial statements themselves, we do assist with the preparation of the financial statements, but generally it's a mechanical function. We take what you give us and put them in the financial statement format. In terms of accounting policies, there was a pretty significant policy adopted this year related to leases. I think we've talked about it the last few years. It's kind of been in the works for a while. And in your case, it actually was pretty significant in terms of the implementation. And when we get into the summary financial statements, we'll point out the impact. But you had to basically capture right to use assets on your balance sheet related to the leases, whereas in the past those leases just ran through the income statement as you made payments. So the impact of this implementation, not really much on your bottom line, but on your balance sheet, you'll see some big changes in terms of assets and liabilities recognized related to the standard implementation. Nothing significant to point out in terms of estimates. We point out in the letter some of the more significant disclosures that are in the financial statements, although nothing really changed from last year other than more expanded disclosures on leases. We go to the next page, and then the rest of the required communication letter is pretty exception based, so certainly happy to report no difficulties, no disagreements. As Haley mentioned, we received everything we asked for in order to complete our procedures and kind of get to the point where we are today. So we certainly thank Michelle and everybody for their assistance throughout the process. Another smooth audit here from our perspective. And then
I'll go over some of your financial highlights. So we just have some very summary reports here. So first one is your statements of financial position. So this is comparing your, can you do slide 9? There we go. So this is comparing your 2022 and 2023 balances just by the overall categories. So your current assets did increase just over $309,000. Within that category, you guys have about $7 million sitting in cash and cash equivalents, as well as $1.8 million in receivables, which is largely tuition receivables, mostly from ECS, which have been collected subsequent to year end. So really that balance typically gets liquidated very quickly after year end with payments. And then in your non-current assets, this is where that really big jump is from the operating leases and finance leases. So those are considered non-current in both your assets and your liabilities. So about $10 million of your non-current assets is related to your operating leases on the primary school, the middle school, and the high school. So a over the next several years, as you guys make your lease payments on those buildings, you'll see both the asset and the liability decline, and then at the end of the lease terms, they'll both hit zero. So it really just grosses up your assets and your liabilities. So it looks very different from last year number-wise, but the activity of the actual school itself outside of the leases has been very consistent.
And that measurement is generally the present value calculation based on the lease payments. That you have.
So then jumping down into your liabilities section, your current liabilities largely is related to teacher salaries that were approved at the end of the year that were paid in the summer months for work performed during the school year, as well as some current debt payments that you guys have, as well as current lease payments that will be paid during the 2024 school year. And then your non-current liabilities is the remainder of your notes payable and the rest of those leases. And then jumping down into your net assets without donor restriction are just under 14 million, consistent in the prior year. And then the amount with donor restrictions is about $78,000. You guys did receive a few restricted contributions during the year, so then in future years when you spend those funds in accordance with the stipulated restrictions, they will be released. So that gets you to total net assets of 13.9 million. Are there any questions on that information?
Sorry, are the donations related to the foundation or separate?
So it's a mixture of both. So about 50,000 of that is related to the foundation, and then the remaining 20,000. We can jump to the next slide. So this is a very summary statement of activities for you here. Support and revenues is just over $28 million for fiscal year 2023. This largely includes your tuition. So special education was your largest increase in tuition, just with an increased number of special education students, as well as increased rates from year to year, which I would anticipate that's going to continue trending upward. So you guys do have increased enrollment, increased rates, tuition, of course, continue to grow. And then your expenses did increase as well. Salaries is your largest expense by far. Salaries related benefits of just under 18 million per year. So that is a pretty big increase, but with adding additional grades, adding new teachers, especially with all the federal funding that you guys have received, I would anticipate this to remain pretty stable in the coming years. So that gets you to your change in net assets or net income, if you will, of just over 1.1 million for fiscal year 2023. And then the next slide does break out your revenues a little bit more. So your revenues by source breaks out here between tuition and government grants and then other revenues. So as you can see, tuition is by far and large your largest revenue source here. So about 15 million of that was regular students and about 9.4 million is special education students there. And then in your government grants category, this is largely your ESSER funding you guys have received from the CARES Act and pandemic relief funding, as well as your Title I, Title IV, all of the funding you guys have historically received. And then that other revenue category is really pretty stable. That's your program service revenue between PCO, student activities, and then contributions you guys have received. And if you jump to the next slide. This slide here breaks out your expenses by function between your two programs and then management in general. So your two programs are education and food service. Education is really what you guys are in business doing here, so that's obviously the largest one. It did have a pretty big increase, as I mentioned, just with additional salaries. That's really what's in you guys here. So within your 21 million of program and education expenses, about 15 million are salaries, which is up to 2 million from the prior year. And then professional services is one of your other largest expenses at just over 2.1 million from 2023. And then event is also a very large expense for you guys in your education category. And then food service is really largely salaries and benefits as well as contracted food services. Very consistent for you guys year to year. As the students, as they come in, that's pretty consistent. And then your management in general also saw some increases in your salaries and benefits between 2022 and 2023, but that increase is consistent with your increase in revenues and nothing to be Are there any questions on the last two slides? Okay. Our contact information is up here. Feel free to shoot us an email, give us a call if you have any questions. Or John and Michelle to get you in contact with us if you have anything. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anyone did not know the pass
Okay, I'd like to thank you for that presentation. And I think just speaks to the great work that's been done in the home office here, and Michelle, and everything that you're doing, and the finance committee does to keep us in good financial shape. And we appreciate the clean audit. Okay, moving through the agenda, just want to say again that we're trying to increase the profile of the board a little bit in the community this year. So I sent out this by email, but I'm asking that everyone try to come to one or two events and represent the board. Hopefully you all got your name badges at the retreat. If not, we'll find it for you. But I printed out the sign out sheet and I'm going to pass it around. Just look through, look at your calendar. If there's anything you can sign up for, then please do. I've already done one event and it was a very good experience, honestly. I was not that psyched about it going into it, but I found it to be pretty good and people were very nice to me. And I know we've already had a few other people get events too that didn't want to know. So please try to sign up for something.
Adam, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
I went to an event like you did, a curriculum event, and just made it a point to introduce myself to all the teachers, and they were super appreciative of a board member being there, a board member showing interest in what they do, and I found it to be very edifying just to be in the building and meet the people that we're affecting. So it's admirable that we're doing this for our purposes, but I think it's great for the community and of the school as well.
Same with the PCO fundraiser. It was a great experience to sit in. You know, when I told them I was not a parent, I was a board member. I was like, oh, but it's drink stuff. No, we got to chat for a bit, and no, it was great. So they're actually really fun about it.
Yeah, feel free to bring your own drinks. Okay, so this was my request from us, I guess, last month, special education student services.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here as Dwight for a moment and introduce two of his people in his department. Dwight is really sorry he can't be with us tonight, but I said that I would introduce Allie Rangillet, who is our Director of Special Education, and Marissa Stavros, who is the Director of Student and Psychological Services. I cannot say enough wonderful things about what both of these two do for our community, for our students. Their unwavering commitment to students, to teachers, to supporting the entire district is just amazing. And they're here to share a little bit about what they do for us and specifically in some areas that we've been asking about. But we will learn a lot from them. And if you are ever at events, I also suggest you chat to both of them because they have a wealth of knowledge to give about what they do for students. Thank you.
Right, so we're here. My name is Marissa Stavros, again, Director of Psychological Services. I started at ECS in 2015. I was the first school psychologist, and I'm going to just share a little bit about services and special education with Allie. We're going to start with the student services department. Just to give you an overview of staffing, so we have 5 school counselors with 3 school psychologists with 2 interns from Duquesne, 4 social workers, a certified school nurse, and 4 health office nurses. So in general, we are under the student to staff ratios for the best practices from all national organizations. So that's something we're really proud of. Happy to have the support of the board and home office to have a really healthy student services department and special education department within ECS. So just a little bit of breakdown by each school. You can see every school has at least 1 school counselor. High school has 2. Primary and intermediate each have their own school psychologist, and then the third school psychologist is shared between middle and high school. She is the one that oversees the interns, so there's support from interns in both of those buildings as well. Each building has a school social worker, each building has a health office nurse, and then we have one certified school nurse that is across all 4 buildings. A little bit about each role. So our school nurses they provide appropriate preventative, acute, emergent, and chronic health care management for students. They promote student wellness. They support academic achievement, encourage safe environments, and act as a health resource. So we use them a lot for a wide range of health needs at ECS because they're very involved with our students. Our school social work team is really focused on building our homeschool community connection, supporting attendance, and helping to break down barriers between home and school to improve student outcomes. School psychologists work on evaluation, of course, and collaborating with building teams to help determine student needs and develop plans to increase success in school. And our school counseling team is focused on preventative skills for overall success in life. Just a little summary from everybody. I do want to break down the social workers, psychologists, and counselors a little bit more, just because those roles can overlap and they also vary from school to school. So I want to really describe what our staff does here. So all of them do things like crisis response, if there's big behaviors or feelings in spaces, they're helping support maybe suicide risk assessments. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but we have a whole child intervention program that all active participants in. They all run student check-ins or individual group counseling at varying levels based on their role. And they all collaborate with families and outside agencies for connection to service and supports for students. Our social workers specifically are our staff coordinators. That's our student assistance program. They support our school-based therapy coordination. We have a partnership with the Children's Institute where we offer outpatient level therapeutic services within the school day for families and students, well, for students. There are homeless liaisons, they support grief and loss, dependence. They're huge parent guardian communications with things like connection to service, safety, attendance, and basic needs. They do our holiday drives and collaborate with outside organizations like Children with UIF. Our school psychologists do a lot of behavior support. They help with creating behavior plans, data tracking, and consultation. They do all of our special education and gifted evaluations for eligibility for gifted special education programs. They do a lot of parent consultation for individual plans, especially in the special education process. So if a parent calls wondering what's the difference between a 504 and an IEP, they're the ones that can help explain that and guide that process. They support academic intervention and grade level benchmark data. They're a huge support to our special education department, and they kind of span into both departments as support, and they consult with counselors for federal court. And then our school counselors are really focused on our universal supports. They do counseling lessons in every grade level monthly. They support new students. They do fun lunches, which are for new students, are helping build relationships. They are 504 coordinators. They support career day. They oversee all of our career lessons that are dictated by the state. They also develop our social emotional lessons that happen during our home-based crew SEL times that students have every day that teachers run, and they work on communication through all of the district wide levels.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Just in terms of you mentioned the 504 consultation, is that referring to the federal law, the Rehab Act?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So through the Section 504 plan, students can receive accommodations based on disabilities. So our counselors are the coordinators of that, but our school psychologists, because they may have just completed a special education evaluation and that student may not be eligible for that, but may be eligible for our Section 504 plan. So they'll work with our counselors on development.
Oh, so that's related to sort of compliance, making sure that we're properly accommodating. Okay.
Yeah, we create just kind of like an IEP, a formal document for a 504 plan that outlines all accommodations students with disabilities need to access general education.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions about this?
Yeah, what licensing and credentials are required for these positions? also wondering, do we provide any continuing education for each of these categories, or are they required to get that elsewhere?
Sure, so with continuing education, all of these roles are within our union, and when the contract was created, they're provided all of 10 professional development days that we support them seeking professional development within their national organizations, conferences, to be able to help stay on top of either credits or whatever they need to keep their certificates active. So that, and we'll run trainings and help with them as well at certain times, but we support as much of their professional development as we can within ECS. As for their certification, so our psychologists and counselors and certified school nurse all hold TDE certifications just as teachers in their area of work. Our school social workers can have, the state just changed social work requirements and they will be moving into a state certification, but right now they have to have some sort of school social work license. And our health office nurses, I believe, can hold any type of nursing certificate.
So are, yeah,
I would have to check. I think they can hold either or. They can all have one. Yeah. Any questions?
Sorry, I guess we'll ask lots of questions.
Yeah, this is great.
Homelessness, food issues. Like, I'm just curious, as somebody who's newer to the district, I mean, can you talk about or give some idea of the extent of some of the commonality or the amount of issues that our students deal with? Are these frequent issues? Are they around the edges, or how are we seeing them in our students?
Yeah, sure. So for homelessness, there's a wide range. So that falls under the McKinney-Vento Act, and there's a wide range of eligibility. You've had students that have had, tragedies, a house fire, or some sort of displacement, have had to move for a wide range of reasons. Some move in with families, some have that more traditional idea of what homelessness could be. We have a handful of students that meet eligibility for this every year. As for like food insecurities, we see that same thing. It's a wide range. While I would say it is still a smaller handful, with things like the holiday drives, we try to provide support for as many families as we can, so that we kind of expand who we provide supports for. But anytime that we have families share any sort of insecurity around food or shelter, the PCO has been a huge support, and we have a budget internally that we help support them as well.
How do you go about, excuse me, how do you go about assessing that? I mean, I think it's like one thing for a family to disclose that, but then there's a number of folks who are out there who probably have social terms of health needs who are not being addressed.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of that comes from a span of different ways we get information, right? Sometimes we do have families reach out and share information with us. Sometimes we learn things from student reports themselves that help make us wonder a little bit more and dig a little deeper. We reach out to families. There's times where we get information from family friends or somebody else within the school. So we will assess and gather information any way we can to try and help support the families. And a huge piece of that is that our social workers are building the right relationships and connections with families. So families feel comfortable to come to us when times are hard, because that's not always a family norm or something that families feel comfortable with doing. So we work really hard to do that. We know that we'll never be a perfect, so that we're open to gathering that information anyways. Sometimes you see things in the news,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, like, when I take my son to the pediatrician, this, on like, the form that I fill out, there's that question that asks something like, have you had difficulty feeding your child, or something like that? And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to incorporate some sort of like assessment yearly to catch those who are not approaching you.
yeah, that's absolutely something we could consider learning about. Dr. Craig is going to share some information from some surveys that we've gathered, and that can be maybe a piece that we consider moving forward to. I say this. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
We also we partner with our food services director because the free and reduced lunch status information is very like confidential information that that is very need to know. Really, she's the only one that needs to know that for certain, making sure students who qualify for free or reduced lunch get that. So this is sometimes a time where that overlaps, where we can have access, our social worker can have access to that information to know which families may need a target just from receiving that. So that is a piece of data that we also have access to when needed and appropriate.
Especially for the drought. So I want to talk a little bit about our whole child program. This is, I want to say, ours collectively from ECS, but definitely mine and the student services kind of pride and joy that came out of COVID. It is our multi-tiered systems of support and intervention program for social, emotional, and behavioral needs. So while we have, and I'll talk a little bit about this when we get to special education, we had an academic intervention program for years to meet a wide range of student needs. We have always done social, emotional, and behavioral support. We've never had as formalized as a system as we do now. So this provides individualized intervention based on student needs, including things like group and individual counseling, behavior plans, referral to our student assistance program, accommodations. We span a lot more than that, connection to service. So we use that program. Staff and teachers can refer students to the program, or sometimes we'll have families call and talk about some of their concerns, and we tell them this is how we can start to meet your child's needs earlier. The point of this is to be able to provide as preventative and proactive services as we can to help students access school and reduce any barriers. We have a core team that consists of all of our student service members I just went over, myself and administrators. We meet monthly to review the data, look at interventions, brainstorm things, talk about what we want to review with teams, and then we meet with teams monthly to discuss implementation of interventions and progress monitoring for the students. This also serves as our pre-referral process for 504 special education evaluations for students with behavioral, social, and emotional needs. So it's been something that our teams are very dedicated to, and we see a lot of really good teacher involvement to help get students more supports faster, and in a way that feels a lot more natural than some of our formalized processes, and gives us really good data. And then finally, just want to go over a recent assessment that we completed at the end of last year. So while we have worked really hard on strengthening our program, it's always valuable to be able to gather outside information from like a non-partial party. So we partnered with Dr. Susan Terasevich out of the University of Pittsburgh. She helped us complete staff behavioral health and school climate assessments. These were completed by a range of administrators, teachers, and student services staff. Based on all of those surveys, she found that ECS meets all baseline criteria established by PCCD for behavioral health, school climate, as well as our policies and procedures. ECS exceeds baseline criteria for a wide range of things. One is the use of our innovative whole child program for academic and behavioral support. Our programs are aligned with staff best practices. ECS has a strong commitment to student support, academic, behavioral health, and social needs of its students. Ratios for our student services department are far better than schools of comparable size and demographics. ECS has a broad and inclusive approach to school climate, as evidenced through strong policies and procedures related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They provide state-of-the-art prevention programs and professional development, have strong initiatives to create trauma-sensitive practices, and have a comprehensive evidence-based approach to behavioral health assessment. Dr. Craig will go over in a little bit some of the recommendations from this as well, but I wanted to share all the highlights.
Right, now you're gonna hear from me. My name is Allie Renwick. I'm the Special Education Director here at ECS. I've been at ECS since 2013. I've been a teacher here in middle school, and then I moved into sort of a coach coordinator role, and then I've been in the Special Education Director role since pandemic year. 2019. So Marissa kind of talked with you about our broad, overarching student services work that kind of touches everyone, every student within the ECS system. So now I'm going to share a little more with you, more narrowly focused on our group of students who qualify for special education services. Obviously, I live in this every day, and I recognize that a lot of my work is rooted in law that is not common knowledge to even those who work in education. So I'm seeking to kind of really give you broad strokes overviews. I'm happy to answer any additional questions or provide any further data that you might need. But I'm just working to kind of give you that big overarching piece. So I think what's important for you to understand is really what special education is. So it's something that's defined by state and federal law that as a public school, we are required to meet the regulations of. So it's driven by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, which is federal law that delineates that public schools provide special education services to children ages 3 through 21 who meet certain criteria. And those criteria are twofold. A student must have a documented disability in one of the 13 categories of eligibility. And then in addition to having a documented disability, it must be evident through data that a student requires special education services, so additional supports in order to access the general education curriculum. So there's kind of this two-pronged eligibility piece. So that's federal law, and then every state has additional state laws that kind of restate what the federal law states and then outline the specific procedural ways that you document things within your state. So there can be variance from state to state, but you always have to meet the bare minimum requirements of the federal law. So in PA, Chapter 711 is the state law that is specific to charter school obligations around special education services. So those are kind of the two big legal pieces that define what we do. And so, yeah.
Are our requirements different than other non-charter schools?
No, charter law tends to, like, it's chapter 14 for public non-charters, and I would say bigger, there's more, but it's all comparable, it's just defined within charters.
Our obligation for special education is the exact same as a public school.
It just is written differently, specifically for charters. That was not it. So FAPE is, we have acronyms in education, right, especially in special education. So free and appropriate public education is a big special education word, and it's important to understand that that is what our obligation as a public school is. So what it means is that we provide support at no cost to families that is specific to the child that qualifies around their unique needs and with families as partners. So we as an IEP team, which involves the parent, the student, a principal, a special education teacher, a general education teacher, those are the core members of the special education team, and those team members decide what is most appropriate for a student, and they make goals and they outline it in their IEP, which is an individualized education plan. That's written annually. It's driven by data and student progress on the goals that the team sets and agrees upon every year. And then another big buzzword to understand in special education is LRE, the least restrictive environment. So the law states, right, that not only do we need to address the student's needs, we need to do it in the least restrictive environment possible. So this means that students with disabilities should learn in the same classrooms as their non-disabled peers as much as possible. So we are always seeking to start with the least amount of support, and then as data shows that a student might be needing more, you gradually increase, right? And really what is important, special education is just really all about removing barriers to learning, and it needs to be individualized for each student. We do have a team mission and vision that drives our team. Before we expanded from 2 buildings to 3 buildings and now 4, we did this work together as a team. We rooted ourselves in inclusive practices, which really is what I think makes ECS exceptional and special and different, is that we are really rooted in holistically nurturing the growth of exceptional students through inclusive, student-centered practices and data-driven targeted instruction. And you can see our vision here, and those are our community agreements at the bottom. We always lead our special education team meetings with this, and those community agreements are also something that is very ECS around all of our time together when we meet as adults in spaces working to serve kids. All right, so some numbers, who we serve here at ECS. So we have 1,029 students at ECS as of today across our system, and 25 of those students qualify for special education services. That's 205 of those kids qualify for special education, which is 20% of our student population. It's pretty aligned with the Pennsylvania state average, which is at about 19% special education. So we're fairly aligned there. And these students have a variety of different needs, from learning disabilities to speech language impairment to autism, emotional support needs, intellectual disabilities. So we really run the gamut of all needs within our system.
I know in some, this may be a silly question, but in some school districts, special ed also encompasses gifted. I just want to make sure in our case, when we talk about special ed, are we talking about those need IEPs, or are we also including gifted in that definition?
Yeah, not including gifted in that definition for us.
Okay.
Those live separately within our model. So we have a little breakdown here for you about how we serve students. So obviously the biggest way we serve students is through the dedicated staff that we have. And another way that I think is important for you to understand what makes ECS exceptional is the amount that we invest in specialized folks doing the work to serve kids. We have 21 special education teachers across all 4 of our buildings. We have 19 special education paras across our 4 buildings. And these are the group of staff that interact and support students each and every day. And are crucial to the success of our students. We also have a team of related services professionals, and we've kind of listed there for you what that encompasses. So those folks are providing those additional supports to students. We contract these staff through different agencies and partners. Some are, as you can see, are on a part-time basis based on the amount of students that need support. We also have an administrative assistant, which I don't even know how she's only part-time. She is magic. She keeps us all really together, keeps us in line, keeps us on point with our, making sure we're meeting all of our deadlines and keeping things organized. And then we've got 3 folks on our leadership team, and actually that number went from 2 to 3 on Monday, which was a huge milestone for us to add an associate director of special education to our department. So, Marissa and I work together, and now have another team member to really support us, supporting this team of 40+ staff across all of our buildings, and really making sure that our programming is mission aligned and being delivered in a way that supports the inclusion of students with disabilities. Some highlights for our programming and referral process. So we, again, like we said, any student with a disability, we are responsible for making sure their needs are met, and we do this in a variety of different ways. So we meet some students' needs within our ECS buildings, and some students' needs outside of our ECS buildings. So we kind of broke this down a bit for you here to see what that looks like. We have flexible programming within our ECS buildings through intervention, small group and one-on-one support, and through co-teaching. We have 162 students, which is 79% of our population is served at the itinerant level. So that's like the lowest level of special education support. That is well above the national average and the state average because of our investment in co-teaching and how many special educators we have in spaces. We have 36 students, which is 18% of our student population in special education at that supplemental level, which means those students might be in special education settings a bit more, getting more direct intervention in small groups, but are still included for the majority of their day. And then 7 students, which is 3% of our population, requires a higher need of specialized support, that we provide with, our partner providers. So that means, more specialized programs like Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, the Children's Institute, PACE School. We have a few partners that we work with families whenever a student needs more than what we can offer our ECS buildings. And we make that team decision together as a team with the parent, and then we fund, the student being in that placement. They're still an ECS student. We frequently work with families to transition them back to our setting, based on data and progress.
Sure. So for how students get referred to special education, school referrals work through our multi-tiered system support and response intervention programs, like I talked about for Whole Child, which is our, again, behavior, social, and emotional needs, and then Meantime is our academic intervention. This is a huge piece of where our special education teachers have access when Allie talks about either co-teaching or intervention in small groups. Students in K-5 have a reading and a math intervention every single day. So our special education teachers are working with their caseload of students in special education and also general education students to provide targeted intervention. We provide a wide range of interventions and then progress monitor to see how they make progress moving closer towards grade level skills. And this is the way in which we would make recommendations for evaluation. So if the student isn't responding to the interventions after time and in multiple different interventions, that are those sorts of indicators for additional data and refer for special education evaluation. Also, parents have the right to request an evaluation for their child at any point. So,
Question about the full-time. I'm just wondering how that works. And I'm just would love to learn more. So, a student is full-time at another center. We fund it, and so it's kind of a pass-through funds. And is the idea that they're still an ECS student for the purposes of or just coming back as a full-time? I'm just kind of curious as to how that actually works.
It's a great question, because it's kind of complicated. Because as a charter school, right, we become a student's home school, right? No matter where you live, if you choose to come to charter school, you choose to come to ECS, you want us to be your home school. We take that on, right? Your taxpayer dollars get funneled to us, we educate you, we're responsible for educating you. And so because we're responsible for educating every student, regardless of whether we have maybe the specialized programming that you might need, it is still our responsibility to find a program that adequately meets the child's needs. So sometimes that means when you see multiple different needs, like we've done over the past couple of years, we've seen an increase in social emotional needs. So we have allocated teaching positions and increased staffing, and we have started to build out a program that addresses those needs. That doesn't always make sense within the model and what we have going on, which is why we have those partnerships. A student who might have more complex mental health needs that needs to be highly fused with education, that's not going to be what our specialty is. And, we're not going to be able to provide daily therapy every day. So we're going to partner with a program who runs that really well, and we're going to make sure that we're there, that you're getting what you need. And so, that's just a decision that we make together as a team. We visit schools with parents, we talk to parents about what they want, for their kids, and we really work with people to figure out what works for that student. And then, we pay a tuition for students to go to that place, and we transport them.
So our relationships with the partners is something that we can determine who the partners are. So it can also be a point of differentiation for schools as well in terms of our relationships with our partners, or just and how close knit and how genial those relationships are.
Yeah, absolutely.
and this is also not a fast process, so it is our job to, because of the least restrictive environment, try all of the different options that we offer within the CSR with what we have before we look for a full-time placement. So that means the student may have, first they might have started out in the general education setting most of the time, seeking teachers with intervention, and then they move to a supplemental level where they have their math and their reading classes in smaller group in a special education setting, or seeing more time with our autistic or emotional support teachers. And we've also during that same time, have them within our whole child or our intervention program, so we're working with our student services staff, and by the time we're looking at a full-time placement for a student, we have exhausted all of the resources and supports that we are able to provide within ECS too.
And is the, this is probably a stupid question also, but is the amount of tax dollar funding that we get for each student with special needs fixed amount, or is it based on that child's needs?
So the amount we get per pupil is fixed. That's
Special needs
sometimes-
you mean special needs or not special needs?
So there's a per pupil rate for a general education student per district and a per pupil rate for special education per student.
Gotcha.
So we do get more per pupil dollars if you have an IEP. And this is why, right? Because you allocate additional resources to students with disabilities as needed.
But it's a flat rate if you have an IEP, regardless of the nature or expense of the potential interventions that are
Exactly,
needed.
you could have speech twice a month, or you could be in a full-time setting. What we're getting from the public school is the same amount, but how those funds get allocated varies based on student needs.
Is that's, I see that by like the state legislature, does that go up every year?
Well, because
It does fluctuate, and it's, each school district is different, right? There's a mechanism through which each district is calculated around their expenses.
Is it the same for each school within the district, including charter schools? Do we know? Is it the same within, for each school within the district, or is it differentiated by school?
No, it's per district.
Okay.
All right, so wrapping up, just, kind of some highlights. Obviously, you can see that we're very proud of the program that we have here at ECS. I think it's important to note that, our program has doubled in size over the past 4 years. We've experienced exponential growth with expansion and also the increase of students qualifying for special education. Our team used to be, like 12 people, and now we have more than 40. We service, a lot of kids. We've added specialized positions for social and emotional support at each of our buildings. We've added an associate director position. We are really proud of the work that we do. We are unique and really mission driven in our work. We believe that providing an inclusive learning environment is very mission aligned, and we are really dedicated to doing that. I think if you know about, other public schools in our region and all around, it's not always easy to do that, right? It's not always easy to start at your baseline of just being in an inclusive environment and saying every kid, regardless of your needs, you deserve to be in a general education setting for as much of your day as possible, and we're going to bring the support to you. That's why we have such an enormous investment in the amount of staff that we have. It's also the reason why it's successful, because it takes a lot of staffing to provide the kind of support that we do. We have very low caseloads compared to what your state averages are. I mean, what's the state average for like 40, or the caseload minimum for like academic support?
Yeah.
It's like 40 special education students, and our average is 10. We ask our teachers to do a lot. I ask a lot of my team, but it has proven really successful for a lot of our kids, and we really do focus on the whole child. We really approach things in a very problem-solving way, and we try to be curious about what a kid really does need and how to build out the supports around them instead of needing to move them to a separate space to get their support.
First, I just want to commend you. I think it's really obvious that there's been a significant, and I know how from some limited experience how contentious and emotional and personal and difficult these issues can be for parents, for students, for teachers, for schools, for everybody. Just the amount of investment that we've obviously made in this and developing this program in what is a difficult area, and obviously you have some limitations when it comes to the finances, and obviously we have tried hard to do that, and I think that's so that's the first part of it. I think my other question, I guess, is related to sort of how, and this is just coming from my, again, sort of limited tangential experience practicing law. and sometimes dealing with cases involving the IDEA and IEPs. How often, and I don't know, I'm not interested obviously in exact numbers. I'm just trying to get a sense of how often do we have, an issue where somebody initiates a due process complaint, or where we have to initiate a due process complaint, or where there are differences. And again, I know often, this is one area where you sometimes run into unreasonable folks who don't want to admit something, but I'm just curious, sort of the general amount of sort of issues that we have in that regard. If you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, since 2015, we've had one due process case, initiated by us. I think we work really hard to partner with families and recognize that we are in charge of educating their most precious commodity, right? Commodity, that's not what it is, you know what I mean? Their most precious thing in the world. And so you're right, yeah, but this can be a really emotional thing. I think what we really work to remember is that we are all here for kids, and a parent is going to be a child's fiercest advocate, and our job, particularly my job, is to help teams mediate that and work through stuff when it gets hard. So by nature, that means that we're gonna have to work through conflicts. I think one thing that we do really well here is really listen and recognize that we have to work through that, because our job is to educate a kid, regardless of how some of us might feel or right. And so we really lean back on data and progress and hearing people and recognizing that there's no one right way to do things. Our obligation is to provide faith, and we can do that in a lot of ways. And as long as the team is in agreement and the parent is on board, then we're moving in the right direction. So again, in those broad strokes of numbers, one due process case. We do have other involvement where advocates and lawyers might be involved, and we work through those as we need to. But overall, I think we experience our numbers are a lot lower maybe than stuff around us. I think, and that is because of our approach of just being very human-centered in the work that we do at this school, and we try to let that bleed into every part of what we do.
Yeah, I just had a meeting with teachers yesterday, and I said to them, by the time we get to a point where we're looking at making bigger changes, we've been working with families for so long, and we should feel good, even though it can be so hard, we should feel good knowing that we've exhausted, we've tried everything we can to keep a student in this space, to give them what they deserve, to use their general education period as much as possible, and learn with it in the setting and the supports that we provide in ECS, because they are unique, and we do provide other experiences that not every student gets to have in their school lifetime. So it's not always easy, but we feel confident in the ways that we have really partnered and tried every support we can for students.
This may be, I'm sorry, Rod, go ahead. I know you were waiting.
I got, or what? We'll bounce off of each other, so to break it up. You said there are 40 FTEs involved in special ed. Did I get those numbers right? Are they 100% dedicated to special ed, or is it? Okay. And then
21 teachers, 19.
Yeah. And then do you find that you have a harder time retaining teachers in special ed compared to the rest of the school? Harder time finding teachers for special ed than the rest of the school? I'm just kind of curious about our workforce.
Yeah. I mean, we should watch that data. It's hard because we do have a core group of special ed teachers who have been here a very, very long time. And in K-5, we had very little turnover in special education teachers. It's harder to isolate that at secondary because we've been growing so much. Expansion here was a little tough, right? Because organizational change is hard. And with all those big changes, we had some more staff turnover all around, and then also in special education. But we've been adding staff every year because of high school programming, so it feels like I've been hiring constantly. But it's something we should watch over time, the difference.
Especially when we get to like steady state.
I mean, I will say that in any special education position you're going to get around here, it is not going to be, you're going to be required to do, I don't want to say that, do a lot more. you're gonna have a much larger caseload. You're gonna have, like, we just do a lot more here to like support, there's just more team. Like, you're not gonna, in other districts, you might be the only one where like people always have another special educator to collaborate with here, and your caseload's gonna be lower. So we do tend, I think, to hold on to people here.
I guess, I mean, this might be a hard question to answer, but I'm just sort of curious, so I'll ask it anyway. Obviously we've said it a number of times, this is a school of choice, and people who, already know that their child may have, or suspect that their child may have certain special educational needs, they tend to not have that many choices, but maybe a few. Do you get the sense that there are a number, or a significant number of families that is maybe one of the driving reasons why they choose ECS, or that particularly there could be a lot of reasons, I suppose, why people would choose ECS over other options, but do you get the sense, or is there any way to know, I guess, whether our obviously robust special education program is one of those reasons that some students might choose to be here rather than their local public school or some other option?
As far as we know, yes. And it's not just special education, it's also student services. You will be hard pressed to find a school counselor, social worker in every building, like we have here. Like you would likely see, for a district our size, maybe one social worker across the whole district. So we like heavily invest in our student facing staff in that way, and I think that's fairly well known in the community. I think another big piece is just how student-centered we approach things. We really think about like, okay, there's this issue, how do we solve that together? And here's all the supports that we have, and here's all the ways we can provide you with information and resources. All schools seek to do that. I think it's just the way that we have chosen to use our budget, right, is very forward in the student-facing staff.
We report data every year too, looking at enrollment numbers, what percent of families are reporting that their child receives special education or has a 504 plan versus how many students are in general education, and we see that those numbers shift as the grades get higher. So we see a higher influx of applications and acceptance of students with 504s or IEPs in our secondary program.
Great. Well, that's commendable, I think.
We've been talking on the education committee just about, measurements, how do we measure our success, and we mentioned something about progress and measuring that. I'm sure for special education, it's a little different in how you think about student progress and things like that. Maybe. So I'm curious about this, and I don't know every single measure, but how, obviously it seems like the program that is successful, how are you articulating that and looking at it and sort of showing those signs?
Yeah, so part of the accountability of an IEP is that it's school driven and it's based around student needs, right? So you could have social skills deficits, and so you're going to have a goal around improving your skills in a specific area. And then there's a way we measure that data. It's reported quarterly, and we're always looking at, are you making progress? Are you meeting goals? Annually, you should see students meeting the goals that are set and introducing new ones, or graduating a student from a goal and moving on to a more complex thing. Our goal is to oversee and make sure that data is moving and that kids are progressing. That's one metric of success. Another one would be, increasing their skill and not needing as much special education support, right? So you might have a student that needs to be seen daily for different things, and then you would see like you slowly fade that and build independence. That's another metric of success, is you're not shifting that.
We also use our benchmark systems and our progress that comes with the curriculum that we use to measure progress against grade level. Students are always our goal that students are growing closer to grade level 2. So we look at that data as well.
We need to keep us moving along here. So I think we could certainly talk about this for a lot longer. But I want to thank you both for coming and giving us this presentation. It was very enlightening for me and interesting to get a small window into your world, which is something that a lot of us are not really familiar with. And I think a couple couple other things I want to say about that. Number one, an organization is only the people who make it up, and it's really impressive that we have such high quality people with both of you, but also all of the ECS staff that come and give us presentations here. I think that's obviously what makes the school special. And then I think the other thing, and this is something we talk about a lot, is I think there are so many great things happening here that maybe we don't publicize enough. So I do want to make sure that we have some communication from the board about what we learned tonight. And so I'll probably talk to Mandy and Dina about maybe a synopsis of this that we can send out to the entire community. Because I suspect that, as a parent, I don't know a lot of this. I suspect a lot of our parents don't. So it would be good for people to realize how much of an investment the school puts into this area. So we'll be in touch about that. Okay.
Let me know, we're gonna stick around for executive sessions.
Yeah. Good, so we'll circle back on some of this. Okay, but I want to shift quickly to Nicole. Did you want to give anything about the foundation? We have the report in your materials for review.
Specifically new there, are there any questions about this is the kind of the annual report of where we are in terms of gifts? We had a meeting last week for our board of trustees. I submitted to Dave, and I'm just gonna pass it to Stan too, a policy for joint sponsorships that had come up earlier this year when we were talking about robotics and making sure that gifts that are provided from our corporate business partners are not aligned to contracts or guaranteed contracts going forward. So that will be probably on deck for you to take a look at here in December or January. Couple important things to note. We did get a second callback for the substantial Richard King Mellon has. So we're very hopeful that program will be fully funded. We will find out, I think, December 22nd, which was so that looks to be, that could be as much as 250,000. We put in for 226, so we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we are soft launching the foundation in the next 2 weeks. So you will see an ask. We're part of the Pittsburgh Gives, which is through Pittsburgh Magazine this year, not through Pittsburgh Foundation, on Giving Tuesday, which is November 28th. I am looking to see 100% of participation from our board in some way, shape, or form as a gift. The gift will go into the ECS coffers, so we're trying to Michelle and I are trying to work through what that looks like so that our auditors can continue to look at that in a way that shows the growth of the foundation. Right now, all of the funds that received from individual donors and sponsorships have really been accumulated under the ECS accounting. So that's actually true numbers aren't fully there, but you can see them in the report. We have a couple more grants that are happening in the next month, and already started on the 2024 philanthropic calendar. So I know what kinds of things that we should be putting in for. And what we will hopefully be able to do in negotiation with the PCO is to get on the calendar in a better way next year when they start to plan the calendar for fundraising, so that we're not competing for funds in some of the same populations that they are. It's not exact, but as I've tried to remind the PCO too, that there are donors that we don't know about that might be giving very small amounts and could be giving larger amounts that haven't been asked. So we're hoping to kind of pull those out of the woodwork, at least a few of them. I'm hoping for a 30% increase in our donation between now and December 31st of participation, which we have a very small donor base, so that is not insignificant. And I'm hoping that that the 30%, the people that have given already increase their donation by 10%. So, again, I will be asking, very graciously, of course, we will be getting an email from the foundation. You can see the website is up. We're almost finished on the logo. And your gifts would be greatly appreciated between now and the end of the tax year. Or if you're feeling particularly generous and want to share it out on social media on his birthday day, which is the 28th, I would highly encourage you to do so. It's an opportunity for us to share out the good work that's happening here. I think that's it. Is there any questions? Yes, we did do an election officers, so I will have that for you in the final end of year report. And I will have final, we're actually bringing Jamie more on for an official visit in February.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. I also want to acknowledge and apologize that when I did the roll call, I was just looking at our website and I forgot Jill, our newest member. She's not on the website yet, which we need to fix, but thank you, Jill. I knew you were here. Okay, safety update.
Yeah, so in the information that we got tonight are the survey results. So there's, I think, 5 separate items for your review. Each one of the PD surveys is an overview and then also a detailed survey. So there's one for parents, there's one for the staff. And then I also included the open-ended responses, and that is both parents and staff for you to review. Just some highlights there from the parent survey. We did have 165 respondents to the parent survey, and 164 of them checked the box that they were a parent, and only one was another adult counselor. Most of the respondents, however, are from our intermediate school, that's the 3rd through 5th grade. There are 77 of that 165 from that building. And the other thing to note is that 80% of our respondents do identify themselves as white. So this is not a very diverse representation of our community. So I ask you to think about that and think about some of the responses that you get to and whether or not it's actually a true representation of our entire community. Of the respondents, though, the total average climate score for our parents was 3.28, and that's out of a 4-point scale. They consider for the ED anything that's 3.4 and above would be agreeable, and 2.5 and below is contradictory. So we're not great there. 3.4 would be better, but 3.28 is not bad. We did, however, have 4 questions that were scored in that 3.4 range. Those were: my child's school is supportive and inviting place for students. Adults at the school respect cultural diversity. My child likes his or her teacher, and I feel welcome at the school. And then we had none that were 2.5 or below. Our lowest were actually 3.1, so 3.1. And those were, at this school, there are good support for all children, including children with learning difficulties, and adults at the school have high expectations for all children. So our staff, we did have 76 staff members complete that survey. The average there, the total average is lower than our parents, but it was at 2.83 across 3 different categories. The highest category was in student support average, and that was a 3. And the lowest was in social emotional learning, and that I think is more about in terms of training for teachers potentially too, and their interactions with students that have higher social emotional needs and being able to support them in that way, which I think is really important for what we heard tonight. And then we also have that open-ended responses. There were only 31 submissions, so that's not a great number of parents. It was open-ended. You can go through and read, there's a lot of qualitative information there. I tried to pull out, just like if I looked at them myself, what would be considered a positive grade versus a negative grade. 10 positive overall positive, like I enjoyed it, I think it's positive for climate, or this has great climate, I enjoy it here, my kids enjoy it here. And 7 were negative. The rest of it is pretty much all over the place. So take a minute to look at that. And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that
Marissa did share about climate assessment that was completed by Audit. As she stated, it was really some positive feedback that we got from the outside viewpoint, and it graded us against the BCCD scale, which is the Pennsylvania Coalition on Crime and Delinquency, and that's the organization that provides safety and mental health. So that's why you want to meet all those baseline criteria in order to be able to access other funding streams. And then, although we met those baseline criteria, she did have some suggestions for improvement. So we should think about the suggestions that were coming from her, as well as potentially some of the information in the survey as we think about next steps. So her suggestions, one was to do the PA youth survey for our older students. So another survey that we go every 2 years. It's just happening now, so we can't do the one for this year. We obviously miss next year, so we want to think about that for the following year. And then she suggested optimizing some of our current systems, just looking at our staff liaison, how they're best utilized, probably utilizing a little bit better, and that get a little bit more for what we get there. And our staff referral across K-12, making sure it's really simple for teachers that might span multiple buildings, so it's not different buildings. Same for our PBIS systems, and then relooking at our technology and social media policies. In terms of training, she thinks that we should continue to train our staff teams, our whole child teams, and our tier 2 and tier 3 positive behavior support teams. And then also character education, specifically for families and parents. So she thought that we did a lot of good training for in-house, but maybe parents would be a nice next step there. And then there were some suggestions that she gave when she did it over the summer, but we actually already acted on. So there were 4 of those. One, we did some trauma training, which we completed for our staff. Threat assessment training, many of us went to Tri-State threat assessment team training last week, and then we'll continue to do that with staff. And then supporting threat assessment teams in the building, we've done that through a connection with the Western Pennsylvania Threat Assessment Hub partnership that we're now in. And then also the parent and family climate survey, which you have the results for. Try to keep it short. Any questions?
Just, the trauma training, did all staff go through that, all faculty? How was that offered?
Oh, sorry, it is not yet offered. It is going to be in January.
Okay, and who would that be offered to? I'm just,
Everyone.
everyone, okay.
And it's through the trauma, I can't remember, everything has an insurance.
Okay, good.
What's our enrollment pre-K to 4th grade? Or what's the?
Total number of students.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's that.
It's probably, it's A 75, and then first, second, third, it's each 100.
I just had a ballpark what the response rate was. So I'm assuming like the kids can't find multiple kids in school, so it's about maybe 100 parents or so overall in the whole school district.
But for us, for survey respondents.
It's on par. It's on par with servers because I've seen.
I talked to some of our middle school administrators, so I also shared the results with our crisis management team, so we had a team meeting over the past couple days. And one of the things that we suggested is maybe doing a few of the questions that we really are wanting to know more about as QR codes. And so when we have parents in the building for different events, like curriculum nights and things like that, if we want to get a higher rate, could there be like, if your ticket out of here is this QR code, is this, a couple question survey, and see if we can't get more respondents that way.
The same selection bias, I think, of the engaged people who are interested in that.
Perhaps.
And just one last question for me, but the staff participation, maybe you said I didn't hear, but how many staff could have responded?
More than 76.
Yeah.
So we probably have about 230.
Okay, thanks.
I did have one staff member reach out to me right after the survey and said, I don't feel like I know enough about what's happened in the support staff person. I don't feel like I know enough about what's happened after to answer some of the more in-depth social emotional learning questions. So I did steer that person to be open-ended. So I also wonder whether or not our support staff felt like they had enough knowledge, which means more training for them.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just gonna jump quickly back to Nicole Schaefer, just to give us maybe like a 30,000 foot overview of the CEO's succession.
That was part of our this after we were planning on that meeting, we've met 3 times, we have representation from, representation from the union, which is the least, and we have representation from, human resources, Rita is joining us. Our previous board member is Michael Arrington. Dave Turner has joined us and is helping tremendously, for our current board member. Vicky Shea is from the administrative side, and Kristen A's is from the community engagement and connection side, and finally, Laura Mendo, who's the principal, assistant principal here at the middle school. We will be having our retreat, which is a 2-hour in-person session to really kind of flesh out a bit more around the artifacts that we've collected around what ECS is and what we want it to be. We're going to be looking at the snapshot of the strategic plan that you received at your retreat, as well as the document that you filled out. If you didn't fill it out, I'll for you to fill it out, that little form about what you're looking for in a leader. Your headlines are also part of our artifacts, and you should see that the RFP will go out and be public to search companies by Thanksgiving. So our final result, our final edits will be happening by Friday for the job description. Finally, just to know this too, this is a little bit awkward because we're coming from that meeting into this one, but I will be giving you a blurb every week that we have a meeting to you and Dina, so that can be information that's publicly shared on the website and throughout the community. And then there will be links and additional information on the community newsletter, which comes out the Sunday before, the first Sunday of the month, and the faculty newsletter. It's all internal faculty newsletter that also comes out that same time. So there'll be additional information with more report out so that everybody can know the activities that we're doing. But those meetings, that hour goes by very fast. We're very busy.
Okay. Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions on that?
Okay, ECS FT Representative Hannah Bird.
Hello?
I'm Hannah Bird. I am the high school representative. I have a statement from the union. I would like to thank, first of all, the PCO for all the pizza and restaurant launches and conference week. They were just very much appreciated. We also want to know how proactive home office has been in terms of communicating in advance for offerings with our union this year, which has become a very nice back and forth at all of the meetings. It's helped us avoid general misunderstandings and enhanced collaboration, and we really appreciate that. And finally, we would like to acknowledge our appreciation to the board for their role in creating that CEO's succession team union member, and for including that seat for union representation. We are confident that Joe Wilson will act in the best interest of the union.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we got Tia here, so we're going to skip the PCO. Okay. Any other business before we move to executive session? You do a resolution, yes. This was back to the audit report. So, yeah. Resolution 2023-11-2105 be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the 2022-2023 annual audit report be accepted. I just want to clarify, is the report will be saw on the presentation, or is there a report that we were supposed to do?
There's all that report is,
Okay.
and the financial is submitted.
Is there any discussion on this?
I just have one question. When is the 990 actually filed, or when is it due?
So that will, we'll submit it before the end of the month.
Okay. Yeah, I know that different times, depending on what our fiscal year is, usually their due date is different, whether we're on the calendar year or the fiscal year. I was just curious. But, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, that's not my concern. I'm just trying to get a sense of sort of what our normal cycle is and, but okay, no, that's helpful.
Have the questions that came up in the finance committee been resolved regarding the names on the 990?
Yes, yeah, I got an updated report today. It's in the folder.
Okay.
Some of those were based on timing, I think you corrected us in the sense that because of the timing of this report was last year, some of those other.
There were some that needed to be updated. So some of those should be.
And I know one thing that, just a flag that comes up in the 990 often, and I saw it in ours, is that we, have to check a box usually about what sort of policies do we have or don't have, particularly with respect to things like governance policies, conflict of interest, things like that. Which I think, obviously, we're going through a policy review now, but I think that's one thing to keep in mind, at least for when we start preparing, whenever this is due, which is part of the reason I was curious, or certainly whenever the next year's is due, to making sure that we're all on the same page as to what policies we're declaring that we do have or don't have.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept this resolution. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes. And I'm going to make a motion now to move to executive session. Let's vote on that. All right, all in favor?
Yeah.
All right.
Good, okay. All right, we're going to go to executive session. Thank you, guests.
Thanks, everybody.
Sure. You got it.
Yeah.